And we're going to dig in and we're going to think about what it means for our user base as marketers, what it means for evolution of the platform. But I think we're going to start with some questions from Will.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I think let's start. I'm going to start by asking you some questions about this new application of the technology and what you think that means for the folks that you work with every day, right? The marketers and the creative teams that are in your training sessions.
Yeah.
So let's start with question one. This is about the invisible assistant and the invisibility of Claudebot, Moltbot. So Moltbot is always on in the background, right? So in your training sessions, do you think marketers are ready to kind of stop logging into a dashboard and chatting and start treating AI kind of as an entity that they message on Slack or email and kind of works with them more as a partner than a tool behind a prompt?
Yeah, I think I have quite a split view on this. So you're right. I'm very, very close to the people using the platform day in, day out. And there are wide-ranging backgrounds, there are wide-ranging attitudes towards AI that I think will inform the way that people think about this kind of agentic autonomy. The really, really great thing for a lot of people will be that removal of barriers to entry. And it doesn't take much to put people off. So something that's very proactive, something that you can access through your usual channels. I particularly see the ability to send a WhatsApp message to an agent as a really, really good way of getting increased engagement. I think the slight worry that people might have is equally that always-on presence, especially working with creatives. People want to be the human in the loop. And I think they'll be a bit concerned about how much an autonomous agent takes human creativity out of the process.
But it's easy to see how lowering friction is driving some of the virality and adoption. And it's easy to see how a tool like Pencil could move from, a user chatting inside Pencil to emailing that message and having that email come back. So that's very interesting. I'd like to move on to this idea that of tool fatigue, right? A creative team or a marketer has to work with tons of tools. So the idea that something is out there using the tools for them behind the scenes is really compelling. What are some examples of use cases or tasks that a marketer or a creative person might wish, especially something was doing for them? Do you come across that?
Yeah, I mean, the big example, and I mean something that Pencil's always been useful for and has been getting more and more efficient on over time, is adapts. I'm not sure I've ever met a creative who wants to spend their day doing 100 different localized adaptations of an asset. And we've definitely reduced barriers in our platform already on that front. Things like Agent Builder and workflows take a lot of the legwork out of that and free up a creative for that far more big picture ideation. What's the concept? And then let the agent do the adapts on it. But this kind of autonomy could be a real game changer on that. And actually, I think there's a big angle to this, as well as the autonomy of the integration, the bringing multiple tools into one place and putting them into a single autonomous workflow.
There's always something in everybody's job that you wish you didn't have to do. So the question is whether this kind of autonomy is going to be effective at making people feel empowered by actually delegating. So I want to move on again, maybe to a question I'll throw to you, Liam, as our head of InfoSec at Pencil. Welcome as a guest on our inaugural live stream. This one is about another exciting kind of feature that Moltbot has popularized, which is this kind of long-running memory, right? Where it works with you as a personal assistant and it kind of remembers you and your task and your context. And in the marketing and enterprise marketing environment, what are some of the implications of that, like infinite memory in that, when someone is an employee of an agency or an advertiser and they're working with AI? Where does this take you?
Honestly, that's a big question, and I don't think we've got time to get into the weeds on it. But what I want to do just before I try is I want to just make something absolutely clear about what we're talking about in part today. So you mentioned Moltbot at the top of the call, and I wanted to be clear that we're interested in the kind of agentic AI component, not the Moltbook component, which is the bit that you've seen in the news a lot recently with all the security issues and things along those lines. I'm kind of excited by this whole piece because I think for the first time we're now looking at a widely distributed agentic system that's actually executing actions on users' behalf, which is kind of really cool. In terms of what we're doing in the enterprise, I think we need to reframe a lot of this conversation a little bit because it's really exciting. It's very easy to get a little bit sort of carried away by conspiracy theory and security kind of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And what I'm trying to do, certainly within my team and within Pencil, is to talk about excessive governance friction occurring when evolutionary technologies like this are treated as something categorically new. And I don't think that's true. I think the risks that are posed by agents like this fit entirely within existing GDPR concepts, security controls and audit frameworks. So if you can think about it in terms of data loss prevention, in terms of, if you like, even thinking of an agent as a digital employee and then doing the whole kind of onboarding process that you'd do for a person, right? You'd give them role-based access controls, you'd give them access to certain bits and pieces of software to help them do the job that you want them to do, and you wouldn't allow them to reach outside of their bounds, outside of their remit. And I think as long as we bring these very mature concepts to this sort of workflow, we're in a good place.
Love the practicality of the answer and the analogy. Obviously at Pencil we're keen on AI being a tool and not a replacement for people or a pseudo employee, and that's a value. But thinking about how to apply existing structures really gives a lot of comfort, right? The organizations know to handle something like long-running memory because
there
you do
should
it for
be
people.
some maturity. There should be some maturity in this space, and you can use those same rules, those same guardrails here, I think.
Very cool. Tim, maybe I'll throw you the questioning to you
Yep.
for the next few.
Okay, so what I'd be really interested to know from you, Will, is if pencil agents can start to talk to each other end to end, what's the implication for our pitch to the world's biggest brands?
Yeah, so we have a feature coming up now that we haven't kind of announced publicly yet, which is all about this idea of meeting the marketers where they are, which is the brief, starting with a brief, and then combined teams of humans and agents working together on the entire brief, not one image or one line of copy, but the whole thing. It's important to us, I think, how we present that, and we've chosen to present it as a toggle. You can log into Pencil as a self-serve user, as a marketer or creative, and you can work with agents to generate content, or you can toggle to brief mode, upload your entire brief, and a workflow of agents will give it a first pass, score it, self-assess, and then call for help from a human creative person if needed. Or the human person can grab the brief and deploy the agents as they see fit. So this is kind of how we're changing the pitch and leveling up, I think, to as agents start to coordinate and as humans start to work with them, tackling more and more complex problems with AI, basically almost now at the brief level. I think that, there's a lot of discussions about orchestration and Moltbot kind of like having access to tools and making its own decisions and being a bit of a black box. We're going in a slightly different direction, which is, for now, a very explicit workflow that is built by a person of agent 1, agent 2, agent 3, agent 4, takes a brief as an input, and that way it's very transparent. You can insert guardrails or checks and balances via automated scoring or human approval at any stage of that explicit process. The process can be triggered, scheduled, etc., but it's very open and transparent as opposed to Moltbot, which is, very cool but very black box. And I think a lot of enterprise teams need that transparency. So that's our direction.
Perfect. I mean, I think in some ways that means adopting it slightly easier as well for the creative user. It's kind of a transition of skills. It's not some kind of dark magic going on behind the scenes. On that general note, I'm thinking about the proactivity of Moltbot. So the things that we've seen going viral, everything that I've seen shared on LinkedIn has really come back to Moltbot doing things totally unprompted. So how do we build that kind of proactivity into Pencil so a user gets value before they even ask for something?
Classically on a live stream, I've now got a dog barking at the postman. So I wonder if you wouldn't mind just answering your own question there for a minute, Tim, while I do.
Yeah, that's fine. I think from my perspective, what's been really powerful lately in Pencil has been the move towards greater tool integration in Agent Builder. And I think we're increasingly going to see additional data sources pulled in as triggers for work being produced. And that kind of cyclical journey through an agentic flow is the step that will come towards that proactivity. I am wondering, let's just throw this over to Liam for a second, that kind of proactivity is also something that's raising questions for some of my trainees about data sovereignty. So are there ways, if we lean into these kinds of paradigms that we're seeing in Moltbot, that we can still maintain this private Pencil environment that is so attractive to enterprise?
So I believe there absolutely is. But to a certain extent, we have to be a little bit less emotional with our language. And I'll try and make that make sense, because I'm coming at this very much from a sort of a security lens, right? So when you talk about awesome things like inhabits a computer, works whilst you sleep, all this kind of stuff, to a security person, that kind of feels like known infosec anti-patterns, right? Inhabits a computer is just persistent execution. Works while you sleep means that you have to trust it implicitly to do its job.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm talking about kind of guardrails. And I feel one of the strongest things that we do at Pencil is the human in the loop aspect all the time, right? Because these aren't revolutionary new tools, which is what I was alluding to earlier. We've done stuff like this before. So marketing automation rules and CRM triggers, I mean, that is an automation that fundamentally is not dissimilar here. And we've got controls and security components that help us to manage any risk associated with that. Serverless functions with API calls, we've done things along those lines, especially around credentials management and robotic process automations. We've done work in those places too. So what we're doing here is getting excited because we're going to give a kind of a direction rather than an implicit instruction.
Yeah.
And we know what our agent has been sort of developed, configured, workflow built to do. So I think when you're talking about doing something unexpected, the reality is it's still within bounds, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong? So, you know, we've basically said, do what you like within this box. We haven't kind of said, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I could listen to you talk about this for hours, Liam. I feel like we need to have a dedicated InfoSec live stream as well. Let's just keep expanding our reach. I am aware that we are really, really close to time. I know, Will, that you need to jump off quickly, but one more question to you, which is really Pencil's mission has always been to be the tool for creatives, not a replacement. So from an executive level, how are we integrating these kinds of changes in a way that make a marketer more valuable to their company, not less?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the user experience is a simple way to make sure that, you know, any new technology is filtered through the lens of a person in the driver's seat. So, you know, we've just talked about proactivity, right? Which doesn't need to be an agent making a decision in the middle of the night. We've already implemented something we call conversation starters in Pencil, where when you log in, there are 3 things that you can click, you know, which is an agent has basically looked at your brand library, maybe consulted some of the recent work that you've done, and is saying, hey, do you want to start here? Do you want to start here? Or do you want to start here? So it's designed for a user. It also only takes one step, and it requires you to say, yes, I want to do that. So it is proactive in the sense that it is surfacing things without you having to face the blank page, but it is requiring you to take action before it does anything, and it is requiring well, it is only one step, and then it checks in with you again. The other thing that's quite exciting about it is that each of those suggestions comes from an agent you've already pre-configured in your workspace. So if you're an enterprise brand and you've built an agent that talks to your social listening data set, that's one of the agents that will proactively speak to you. So the guardrails of what that agent can do are already pre-configured at the agent layer before it's allowed to be proactive. So, part of it is user first thinking, and part of it then is kind of like product design. But it's very much part of every single design decision that we make.
Perfect. And I think so much of that is kind of my biggest takeaway from this discussion. So we're not talking about AI taking over or replacing the creative process. It's about AI taking the friction out of that process. So our core value remains exactly the same. AI is a tool, it's not a replacement. We're building agents, we're building systems that take away some of that grunt work, that take away the resizing, they take away the adapts, they take away the file management, and we're letting creatives focus on their best work and their best outputs. So it's very exciting to see the directions that we're going in to enable this, and we'll have many more interesting chats about other goings on in the industry and in the field over the next few weeks. Thank you so much for joining us. Please do join us again on some of our streams next week, and thank you to Will and Liam for joining me today.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.